Yo, I got 2 boots and a hell of a lot of faces. I don't like looking at me. Damn, ayo, shave.
It was 1974. Young auto beat rolled out the factory door. Fresh, clean, yeah man, not a scratch. Indianapolis initial dispatch. First 13 years just sat back. Soaked up culture, learned how to rap. Cut my teeth on a crew called Brain Sand. With a new man that I'm deep on my man, but me know I had to be warming up. Hit beat down, started forming up. A crew that definitely pulled it up. Shab a mask that band that'll bump your rump. But all good things gotta die sometime. Transfer, but there ain't no sunshine. Hooked up with these auto beat allies. Knew we were like-minded after one line. One night, man, yo, I knew we had work. Lost one beat junkie, I'm through with that jerk. Step back, it's a red alert. I'm not kidding. Get in any motor vehicle that you can fit in. Sit in any seat in the emergency position. Allow my auto beat to make it happen in no vision. I'm just another dude on just another stage in yet another city part of a bigger state in. There's a bigger shows going down every day, so what you gonna do, man? Stanley would say that there's a lot of rappers still in the void. A lot of hot crews out there making noise. Every single night, but there's a bigger choices. You hear now, so raise your voices. You hear now, so raise your voices. You hear now, so raise your voices. Man, I hate it when I gotta get up when it's dark. I'm too tired and I just wanna sleep in. Start thinking I might have a cough. Think my boss would believe it. This weekend I did a lot of drinking. My voice sounds deep, so it just might fly. Start thinking that I just might try. Clear my throat, look. Hi, this is Andrew Hall. I'm not feeling too well. Think I got the flu, but I really can't tell. Voice is all scratchy and it started to swell. Well, you know I might be contagious. It feels like that it's in the early stages. My girl had it, and I think I caught it.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, dude bought it. Hook, line, and sinker, man, they never even thought it. It's time to get to sleep, restart niggas. Hey, really not prepared to begin this day. Up last night at a show too late. Too many drinks and too much smoke, and I wasn't even rapping, just licking low. Hold up, I gotta get the cell phone.
Hello?
It was nice, talking real fast. All I made out is jumped at the past. I'm just another dude on just another stage in yet another city part of the biggest state in. There's a biggest shows going down every day, so what you gonna do, man? Stanley would say that there's a lot of rappers still in the void. Lot of hot groups out there making noise. Every single night by there's a big choices. You hear now, so raise your voices. You hear now, so raise your voices. You hear now, so raise your voices.
Oh, it gets deep. It gets so deep.
All right, welcome. Had a few bites of sandwich. I think we're good to go. Can you hear me? Look, I've still got most of it left, so hang around and I'll start eating again when I get a little break. It triggers you. It triggers Lauren too, but I think probably in an opposite way. All right, so this stream I want to carve out this topic as sort of a standalone thing from the rest of the evening, mostly because it's just entirely different subject matter. But I want to cover a little bit about the trade deal that happened, or that was announced yesterday by Trump. And cover a few articles. Look at it in the bigger picture, because I've been saying since day one that these I don't believe that the U.S. and China are actually adversarial so much as cooperative in moving the global economic agenda forward. Right. China is our biggest trading partner, and I believe the U.S. and China are the two biggest economies on the globe. So, if you look at macroeconomic movements, it looks to me like what we're trying to do is balance out global sort of consumption, production, and purchasing power. And so now that this trade deal is happening, where they've agreed on, they haven't released the details, but the volatility should come to a close. And let me share my screen here. So we'll go over this real quick. This shouldn't be a long stream. And then when I end this, everybody from both channels, I'm streaming to Flow State and Powder Dusty, will just automatically redirect to a new live stream where we'll cover a few things. Chris Ryder for Public Safety is going to join, and he got something kind of interesting just to touch on a little bit, and then Duke Farrow. I hope that Duke joins. I wasn't able to send him a message on X because, like I said, I would, because X doesn't let you send messages if you're to people who don't follow. Anyways, I'm not a premium member, so fuck you, X, and your elitism. And we'll have an open panel over there. But I'm going to carve this out because it's dry. All right, so this is the World Economic Forum. The Davos eats the bugs. They're the eats the bugs people. But this is actually their wheelhouse because it's world economics, right? So this article came out recently and is pretty interesting. I read some of it, but then quit reading it because I figured we'd cover it. It was a perfect storm of sudden wealth, weekends, and new ways to sell happiness between the end of the 19th century and the 20th century. Productivity in the U.S. surged. The number of weekly hours clocked by workers declined, and retails honed the use of advertising to soak up as much disposable income as possible by making the simple act of buying something seem like a fulfilling ritual. Also, along those lines, other fulfilling rituals are donating to the stream, super chats, PayPals, gifted membership. These are all very good sources of personal fulfillment. Let's see. Spending on personal consumption in America is by now a cultural touchstone that accounts for nearly 70% of the country's GDP. On the other side of the global seesaw, China is trying to boost its own domestic consumption with a mix of incentives. A country that's cultivated manufacturing to the point of becoming the world's factory now aims to rebalance by cutting its reliance on exports. So this right here is just pointing out that as far as global economies go, one of the biggest global economies, us, is consumptive. The other one, China, is reliant on exports. Neither of these are well-balanced positions. So both countries have an incentive to try to get a little better balance in their economic structure so that, well, it's just more durable, right? And with the tariff, sort of the tariff wars, it kind of forces balance, right? If you put massive tariffs on China, which is our biggest trading partner, if they rely too heavily on exports and we rely too heavily on consumption, then that shoves both economies in the direction of of a more balanced economy. It forces China to cut exports. It forces the U.S. to cut consumption. That means that the world's two biggest economies are effectively pressing in opposite directions. Okay, this is just what I said. China may crave consumer spending, but the U.S. wants desperately to pair its own heavy spending with more production. The contrasting agendas raise the question, how much consumption is the right amount? One could certainly argue that the U.S. is not necessarily the right benchmark, Cornell University economist, whoever that is, said. On the sidelines of summer Davos, the country saves relatively little, and its trade deficit is glaring. In China, on the other hand, a high rate of savings signals that people feel the need to compensate for what Prasad described as a threadbare social safety net. We don't have a clear measure of how much savings should be ideal, he said, but China is clearly an outlier, and the excess capacity being churned out by some of its domestic industries only makes spurring consumption more imperative. So, since China's still manufacturing a bunch, but has been shipping abroad fewer products, they're probably looking for ways to incentivize consumption, just as we did it 100 or 200 years ago. Practically every government economic policy document where they talk about big policy changes talks about that need. Manufacturing-based growth and Barbies. Affordable goods multiplied in America in the 1890s. Artemus Ward, a pioneering advertising executive, perfected the use of jingles and devised a stunt that sent a sailor in an alarmingly tiny boat on a transatlantic voyage to promote a soap brand. Around this time, the phrase conspicuous consumption was coined to describe flaunting an ability to buy the best available food, drink, narcotics, shelter, services, ornaments, apparel, weapons, and accoutrements, amusements, amulets, and idols or divinities, as well as microphones. U.S. consumer spending continued to flourish in the second half of the 20th century. A corresponding manufacturing boom did not. Globalization, after all, meant that more things could simply be imported. What's interesting here is that also in this, that they don't talk about is also in the second half of the 20th century, we moved off of the gold standard and onto the petrodollar. That has allowed us as consumers in the U.S. to continue consuming and basically depend on exporting our inflation abroad, because we're the central reserve currency for oil exchanges. So that means because globally people need, other countries have to do oil trades in dollars, that means that there's a demand in other countries across the globe for dollars. That means, but there is no corresponding demand for, say, the franc. When's the last time anybody here needed a French franc? Never. So since there's global demand for dollars, but only a local supply for dollars, we can print our own currency and feel less repercussions than any other country would. It's been a massive benefit. I know that moving off the gold standard gets shit on a lot by people. They would, oh, we should move back to the gold standard. But what people don't understand is moving off of the gold standard and then tying the dollar to oil trades globally, that move has done more to allow us to be prosperous and continue our consumption rates than anything else. If we were tied to the gold standard, still things would, our belts would be tighter. So that is what has allowed us to continue that consumption trend. China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. 2 decades later, its economy was 13 times bigger, and the U.S. was relying on it for nearly a fifth of its imports, while running a $355 billion trade deficit with its fastest-moving rival. On that note, I don't know that I don't think trade deficits are. I don't think they're the issue that they're presented as. I think it's a bit of a deceptive measure, really. I'm not going to go far into that, but I'll just state that and leave it there. Eventually, this seemed like a questionable proposition to an increasing number of people and politicians. Consumption could keep the U.S. economy in business, but it wasn't a proper anchor. Reindustrialization became the order of the day, but there's a catch. Johns Hopkins University political economy professor Yun Ang said during a summer Davos session, "There is no tried and tested playbook for reindustrialization. We know how to become industrialized, but we don't really know what you do when you already are industrialized, but you moved your production abroad, and now you want to bring it back." I've said this before as well. I view reindustrialization as not a move towards prosperity, but a move towards a new permanent lower standard of living. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, because the way that we've been just basically living off of the clout of the dollar internationally and printing wealth into existence and then exporting our inflation, that's not sustainable, it's not responsible, and it's honestly kind of douchey. But the fact of the matter is, we don't want these jobs. Americans don't want low-paying jobs. I can't walk into a gas station anywhere around me without seeing signs stuck up on every cooler door that says that they're hiring. Factory jobs are much the same way. It's low-paying, most of them, low-paying, repetitive. It's just not what American employees want. So, how do you make American employees want them? Well, you either reduce their prosperity, so they'll take something that's less desirable, or you increase their pay, which is just a longer way around the block of reducing their prosperity. Because if you pay people more to do the same job, say, make a lighter. If I'm a lighter manufacturer, and instead of paying a Chinese guy $5 an hour, I'm paying an American $25 an hour. What happens to the price of lighters? It goes up, of course. And so now, even though I'm making $25 an hour to produce a lighter as an American employee, and I'm happy with that, well, this lighter now costs me $6. So my purchasing power hasn't increased. We've just made the labor input into a product more expensive. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, we end up with this at the same spot, which is a lower standard of living for Americans. As the U.S. manufacturing base receded, China's manufacturing-based growth generated more wealth and spending. The U.S. tried to tap into it by sending over some of its own exports. An expensive attempt to popularize Barbie dolls in China fell flat. Other items have translated better domestically, like Swiss watches. A wavering of Chinese appetite for the expensive timepieces has had a decisive impact on the stock prices of Swiss watchmakers. Recently, flagging Chinese consumer sentiment has been a concern. Prasad said real progress had been made on the issue, but then the pandemic hit. China is building factories. It's turning out a lot more electric vehicles, for instance, but the demand is not quite there. Yeah, because electric vehicles suck. Meanwhile, the U.S. is still relying heavily on consumer spending to buoy its own economy, as reindustrialization remains a work in progress. Researchers have tried to identify a cultural element to the disparity. One study suggests that countries with Confucian traditions have consumption rates much lower than the global norm. But that may be as questionable as the Protestant work ethic often assigned to an America that also consumes lavishly. Interestingly enough, about the Confucian thing, when my daughter was in 6th or 7th grade, so this was I don't know, 3 years ago or so, she had a project that you were supposed to have a parent help you with, and it was teaching kids about Chinese religions or Chinese religions, basically, or Asian ones, and it taught them about 3. It had Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, I believe, was the 3rd one. Taoism, and the way that these 3 religions were presented to the students was fucking outrageous to me. This is the last project my daughter ever asked me for help with. Since then, she's forged my part of the assignments. I was irate because the way it presented these 3 different religions, Taoism, which I'm not well versed in, but I'm kind of a fan of from what I know about it. It was presented it really wasn't presented at all. It's clear that you were not supposed to walk away from this lesson thinking Taoism was a good option. Literally, and I won't ever forget this, the conclusion of the section on Taoism said, Taoism's greatest contribution to Chinese culture is that it has contributed a lot to Chinese culture, and it just blew my fucking mind. Buddhism got a little bit better of a treatment, but not much. And really, Confucianism was the one that, after reading all these segments, you were supposed to walk away from this having learned that Confucian perspective is a winner. The propaganda was obvious. I was irate. My section of the assignment, it's got a little worksheet and it's got little, questions. You're supposed to write a 1 or 2 sentence answer. I wrote a full ass page and then flipped it over and wrote on the back another half a page, tight little print. I just bitched him out. I said, "This is fucking outrageous." And then I took a picture of it, front and back, because I knew what my daughter was going to do. I said, "You turn this in the way I have. You turn this in, because I'm also gonna email the pictures to your teacher." Poor girl. Anyways, yeah, she's not brought home one single assignment to me since then to help her with. All right, where are we at? Oh yeah, so anyways, that ties in. When I read this and saw that it kind of made the light bulb click. Like, oh, that's interesting that they're teaching American students, lessons that promote Confucianism. And right here it's saying that Confucian traditions have been identified with lower consumption. So, ooh. What time is it? I got to pick up the pace. Researchers have tried to. Oh yeah. All right. A healthier balance in both countries could pay serious dividends. Finding it without letting the present asymmetry feed greater animosity would be an ideal outcome. So, here we're not going to stay here very long. I got the next stream starting shortly. But Joe wants to pick up. Do you want to pick apart something, Joe, or anyone really? Bite me.
Hello, sir. How are things this evening?
They're good. How are you?
There are multiple points you've addressed that are very good and others that I would disagree with. First of all, the the endorsement of Confucianism in the education system in opposition to a parent's values, which has led, in your case, to your daughter alienating you from assignments that you are supposed to participate in her education. Do you think that's by accident?
I do. I do. I don't think that they expect most parents in Kansas to have strong feelings about Confucianism or Taoism. So
Would you say
maybe not ultimately, but I think I do know that her teachers were. She said that when the teacher handed back the assignment, she didn't say anything, just set it on her desk and kept moving. She got an A on it. They never, no, yeah, like the teachers were surprised. I'll give you that.
the teachers were surprised at your input?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then they were successful in discouraging further input from you through your daughter. So now she does not ask for your input anymore.
Correct. Now, in all fairness, she really hadn't before, because she's just school is easy, honestly, and so it's easier. She'll just flip through and do things. She does. School's not difficult for her, but I think that, yeah, no, yeah, that is correct.
Okay. So I am going to go on record as saying that that is not an accident. That's actually intentional. Separating you and your opinions from your daughter's schoolwork. And we see that regularly in school. Now, I wanted to ask you a question about the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
Is it your position that the abandonment of the gold standard has contributed to a reduction in lifestyle for the general population in the United States?
No, I think
What can clear that up for me there?
okay. I think that the gold standard was a mental binky, but wasn't really restrictive on inflation the way that it's intended to be. Because at the end of the day, most people are not going to bum rush. I mean, we can see when the gold standard was implemented is because France wanted to exchange some dollars for gold, right? So the very first time we have that system stressed, we're just like, no, fuck that, we're not doing it. So it obviously was not an effective restraint. I think the benefit comes from attaching the dollar to an international commodity, right? And that creates international demand for it.
Okay, so can you take me through why the 1950s father pumping gas and washing windshields at a gas station could support a family, buy a house, go on vacation? And that is absolutely, this is when they were on the gold standard, and that is absolutely unattainable these days for three 1950s fathers living in the same household to do that.
Yeah, because at that point in time, we hadn't had such a long history of printing our way to prosperity, right? This is 1950. This is 3 times as long a time period since the implementation of the Federal Reserve about. So the debt and inflation has snowballed as those things do. And now there's a time delay between the printing of new money and the felt impact of it, and borrowing money and then the repayment of it. So a big part of that is time. I would say also that culturally, we are more consumptive now, as we just read, which certainly doesn't help anything. But even more than we're more consumptive, we're less productive.
So would I be mistaken in saying that the gold standard is a hedge against overprinting of currency?
I think that gold is a hedge. I think that the gold standard is political propaganda.
So to say you're tying the value of your currency, now correct me if I've got this wrong, but you're tying the value of the currency that your nation holds to the amount of gold that it has in its reserve. First of all, is that the gold standard or am I mistaken?
Yeah. Yes. So the gold standard is That exactly what you said, and basically the dollar was redeemable, at least in theory. You could redeem it to the U.S. Treasury and then get gold in exchange for it. So,
So to tie your value to the dollar of the gold that your printing presses in your nation would not be able to overprint if you were on the gold standard. Doesn't it seem like the abandonment of the gold standard would then free your printing presses up?
well, yes, but only in theory, right? It works in theory. In practice, though, we have no we can't audit. The American people can't audit Fort Knox. So we don't actually know how much gold is on hand to be had, and we're left to take the word of the government as to whether or not, there actually is not an enforcement mechanism of the gold standard, and that's
So
that's
they
why that's why I think it does work in theory. It does not work in practice.
because they can lie.
Correct.
Okay, so the gold standard would work as advertised if we could count on the government to be honest, which we cannot. So the theory of the gold standard is practical, but we can't count on those administering it to be honest, which is why it
Correct.
doesn't work.
Yes. Yeah. That's my opinion on it.
Okay. Last point, and you're going on to another stream. You're starting another stream right now.
Yes. We got about 10 minutes.
Okay, it's my opinion that these debates that you get yourself involved with the Ortho Bros and Jay Dyer and Jim Bob and others, you're very strong in this economic piece.
Mhm.
If I was you, I would steer the debates in that direction rather than ethereal, spiritual, biblical knowledge. It seems to be that's what they do. They
But
steer the debates.
those are ethereal topic, right? Those are the topics that they engage on.
Well, it depends. You can steer anything into practicality. What works? What is pragmatic? See, this is the argument that they make, and this is the argument that Jim Bob and I got into on your channel. Will a Christian nationalist government actually function? And he, in the end, admitted, no, it won't. So, spirituality is nothing if it doesn't work in practice. So, that's my advice. Thanks, sir, for having me up.
Thank you for joining, and I agree with that assessment. I think that they're aware of that. I think that they're aware of their own vulnerability with the practicality, and I think
which
that
is which is why they steer it away from that every single time. Which is why you are not pleased with how your debate with Jay Dyer turned out, but in my opinion, having observed that debate, there were several observations that you made that were right on the money. For example, his body language. When he became uncomfortable, he'd start leaning away from the mic, he'd start rolling his eyes. When you pointed that out, he denied it, which was a lie. When anybody's lying, you've got them right away.
Yep.
So his whole goal in debating is to steer this debate into these esoteric places where he's spent tons of time studying this philosophy or this literature, but it's all bunk. It's like arguing how many angels can dance on the pin of a needle. It doesn't matter. Does this garbage actually work? Keep the debate in that
Right.
format, and they can't win. Hey,
Right.
thanks, man.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, see you later.
All right. Hey, and we're gonna. Oh, well, he's gone. I'm gonna look at a few fights in the next stream. I know that old Joe likes boxing. I guess I didn't know that until recently. I found out that he likes boxing. So that is one of the things we'll do. Quantitative easing is the printing of money to control inflation. To control inflation. I don't know where you copied and pasted this from. Printing of money causes inflation. The printing press has never stopped and hasn't stopped since we went off the gold standard, correct? Good evening, D3. Yeah. Yeah, the religious debaters are self-aware enough, though, to know that they want to kind of keep things steered off of pragmatism, if possible. Let's see. You saw me on the YouTube streets today. I don't think I've been on YouTube today, have I? This is the first thing I've been on. So either I was commenting or somebody else was watching something, restreaming something. If the printing press stops, the system goes into global bank holiday, and the banks will always choose hyperinflation over mass inflation. That's correct. I fled a channel that was talking about the host's prostate. My goodness. Well, I was about to start talking about my prostate, but I guess if that's not what the people want. All right, let me get the next stream popped open, and don't forget to like the video while we're here. Like this stream, click the share and the copy, and then we'll get the next stream rolling. Mm-hmm. Alrighty, Chris is already backstage on the next stream, so I am going to go live there. Maybe I should play a little song over there.